for the very in-depth presentation, which is allowed to explore the experience of our organization to the sustainable tourism and circular economy and processing of plastic and food wastes. The thing is that today's event is organized in close collaboration with our partner in Central Asia. This is the Ministry of the Economy and Commerce of the Kyrgyz Republic. And I'm very pleased to invite with the welcoming speech of Mr. Seyitov Choro Seyitovich. The floor is yours. Distinguished colleagues, and I'm very pleased to for the work. Just yesterday, we had the forum, introductory forum. We discussed the issues of water resources and environmental protection. And today's meeting is organized of the day on the environmental protection. This issue on the pollution with plastic from the side of the ministry is considered. We met with the representatives of businesses, those who are producing a lot of plastic and Coca-Cola bottles and some other companies who produces those who are producing products, drinks with using plastic. We did this issue, and these issues is a very crucial for us as well. When in the eve of the touristic season, we're just cleaning the Isiku Lake, the shore of the Isiku Lake. So we found a lot of wastes, and the plastic have been found, and even glass. The work is going on in the framework of the tourism. As we know, the preservance of the ecological norms, environmental norms. As you know, today there is an ongoing work, the development of the responsibility of the producers. As you said, as I said, we have met with colleagues of the Choro company, Coca-Cola, and others. They understand their responsibility because their products and the packaging from the environmental point of view is polluting, and they're ready to participate. Of course, this is necessary to raise the issue. The mechanisms, the way how it will be organized and how the utilization will be carried out, who is going to pay for that, these kind of issues. Apart from that, as you know, the tourism department was under the Ministry of Culture. Today, just recently, it was transferred to the Ministry of the Economy and Commerce of the Kyrgyz Republic. So the policy of tourism, and we have the foundation of tourism. This is our financial tool, we could say. Through these two bodies on the foundation of tourism development and the Department of Tourism are ready to promote the environmental agenda regarding the pollution with plastic. I think that we'll have a lot of things that we can do because tourism is considered as one of the important spheres in our national and political documents as it is provided for. Tourism is one of the main sectors of the economy. And secondly, it gives big employment during the summer holidays. We have to know that fact. Isikul traditionally, we could say that from the information agendas go that the Narin province is also one of the big consumer, but the exporter of the touristic services. A lot of tourists are going to Khoshkhor and Songkul Lake and other destinations as well. Apart from that, in Kyrgyzstan, we have a very big peaks of 7,000 meters above the sea level peak of Lenin in the south, and there is another link in Han Tengri peak. We understand what is happening in Nepal in peaks, but there are many plastic wastes, and this is also related to us as well, and we'll take it into account, of course. And for the settlement of the issues on the global level, we have intergovernmental committee, and there is ongoing work on the pollutions with plastic, and many countries are participating in this process. And we are ready to consider proposals of our international partners on global initiatives in the sphere of tourism implemented by UNEP. And we are ready to work reflecting the pollutions on the pollution issues in our national documents. We should move on towards the free plastic development. If I'm not mistaken, in the parliament there is an ongoing work to exclude packages from the turnover from plastic. But this is just on the level of discussions. I think this is also a good sign and to avoid the pollution of the nature of our country. I would like to thank our colleagues. In conclusion, I would like to thank all of you. Thank you, Choro Seyitovich. When UNEP has started its activity in the region on sustainable tourism, Department of Tourism is just expressed a very firm position. I think it's quite right that department is working on under the Ministry of Economy and Commerce, since it is directly connected to the economical and sustainable development. And I would like to thank you for the interest and the aspirations to continue our cooperation, UNEP, in our program Go for SDGs. I think that we'll have many interesting events ahead. Thank you very much. So now I would like to invite for welcoming speech, and I'm very pleased to do that, Asel Arstanbekova, the head of the organizations of the Central Asia. She demonstrated in practice the way we should work in touristic sector and how to realize the circular economy to manage the plastic and waste, and how we can attract all of the interested stakeholders, local administrations, private sector, and non-governmental organizations. Asel, the floor is yours. And distinguished colleagues, I'm very pleased to welcome all of you at this two-day webinar, Sustainable Tourism. And we dedicate it to the practice and the development of tourism from the point of view management, the waste management, and the tools that can support this process and settlement of the collecting the waste and provision of the sustainable growth. As Madina mentioned earlier, we are the partners of the UNEP program in the implementing of the fifth, the 12th, the goal of the SDG. In our work, we pay great attention and implement and piloting approaches that we can reconsider approaches in the tourism development and return of the plastic. We can identify the other instruments for the settlement of the pollutions with plastic. like in the whole world, in our regional markets, I'm talking about Central Asia, this issue is quite crucial. We didn't find 100% solutions the way we can provide the settlement of pollutions. Nevertheless, we see how the governments are creating the norms in the field of legislations. We see the way how the private sector is involved into the organization of the processing of plastic. We see the way how civil society is involved. And of course, the tasks of our webinar to find the best practices on a global level and provide transfer of this experience in our countries. The pilot project that we have implemented in Kyrgyzstan, we will talk at the end of our webinar, and I would like to welcome all of the participants and interested stakeholders, those who joined to our webinar. First of all, our main partner, UNEP program, and we express our gratitude to our eminent experts and respected organizations, those who are implementing the agenda on sustainable development, combating plastic and development of the ecological certification and other solutions. Today and tomorrow we will be able to listen expert opinion of the Central Asian Caucasus countries. I think this is invaluable experience that we can unite all together and implement the best practices in our local context. And I would like to thank of those who joined to these webinars as observers, and we have invited the sector of tourism and the sector correct and also the hospitality sector. We have the tour operators from all countries of Central Asia. We are very pleased to welcome them on board. We hope that in future we can make a very serious efforts all together in this direction. Thank you very much.
Спасибо, Асель.
Thank you,
Действительно,
Sal.
опыт очень ценный,
This is
и
a very
поскольку в программе
valuable experience.
буквально 2 минуты
I
рассказать,
have
что
2 minutes
сегодня
to
будем
say
делать,
what
я
we're
хотела
going to
сказать,
do now.
что
I would like to say
мы
that
действительно сегодня пригласили
today we
нескольких
invited
экспертов,
key
международных
experts,
экспертов,
the
которые касаются
well-known
того,
international
как
experts
практики
in the world,
международные стандарты, а
the
также
international standards and the
к
requirements,
гостевым домам,
to the
гостиницам,
guest houses and
более
hotels,
в туристические
those
дестинации
involved
и
in the
тому подобное.
touristic destinations
Вот
and
что мне
recreational
кажется
zones.
очень важен и
This
ценным, и
experience is really valuable
касается
and
ту работу, которую
useful.
мы с вами ведем
And the work that we
вместе со
conducted
всеми
with
заинтересованными
Asel and
сторонами.
other
В этом
interested
контексте
stakeholders
я
and
надеюсь,
Ministry
что
of
и
the
другие
Economy
к нам
and
подключатся.
other agencies could join us as well.
Сегодня будет хороший
I
обмен
hope for that
информацией, который
we'll have
позволит в
an
дальнейшем
interesting
не
exchange of
только задать
information
вопросы, но и также
that
немножечко
can create
дать
some
вам
questions and
возможность
make some
посмотреть, где
brainstorming
действительно
and
было
see the way
недостаточно
where we
передач,
can promote
где есть еще пробелы, на
this
которые
agenda
необходимо
further.
обратить внимание
What
в
kind of
будущем.
gaps we have
В данном
that we have to
случае
consider
тот проект, который мы провели,
first.
заканчивается его первый
This
цикл,
project
но
is
наша
coming to
программа
an end, the first cycle.
здесь UNEP будет
Go
продолжаться
for as
период
DGS
следующего года. Начнется
NEP
второй
is
цикл.
in the
И здесь
middle
мы хотели
is going
как
to
эту
be the second cycle.
от наших
We would like to
экспертов,
hear from our
где
distinguished experts
лучше
what
акцентировать нашу
would be the
деятельность,
best
нашу
areas
работу
we can concentrate our
Дополнительно я
attention.
хотела бы сказать, что
Additionally, I would
вебинар
like to say that our webinar
будет запись этого вебинара, он также сейчас
will have
демонстрируется открыто на
the recording of
wastenet нашего партнера.
on the
Вот,
Facebook
поэтому
page.
передавайте.
our partner
Сегодня первый
wastenet.
день, завтра будут вопросы.
So you can transfer
Пожалуйста,
the first day.
подключайтесь.
Tomorrow we'll have the issues on ecological certification. This is one of the opportunities to get opinion from our experts from first hands and make the proposals and ideas. Let's move on to the presentations of the international experience. As I said, we'll listen the presentations. Please stay with us because each presentation is unique. And this experience that we are really pleased that our experts who are participating agreed to come and say the way how it is working in their countries and what are the instruments. And I would like to invite in Ms. Dagmar Lund-Durlacher from Germany. We have to say that sustainable tourism is based on a couple of principles when we talk about food waste and management. Food waste management is one of the priority directions. Dagmar, please, and the floor is yours. It's going to be translated in Russian language, your presentation. So please, you have to move your slides.
I haven't understood a word, but I think I will start now with. Can you please share the slides with the audience? That is great. So hello and good afternoon. Thank you for this introduction. And it's a pleasure for me to be here and share some insights about this important topic with you. I started already about 10 years ago to deal with food management, sustainable food management and food waste. And I did a number of research projects, but also consulting and training. And some of these results and experiences I can share with you today. So please, could you go to the next slides? For most tourists, food consumption is a very important part of the holidays. So eating local, authentic food can enhance the vacation experience. And for destinations, food tourism is an opportunity to promote the local food and also to preserve food traditions. But at the same time, if this food is consumed unsustainable, it can cause harm for the destination. And I share here on this slide with you some of the topics why food waste is such a major concern for us. There are a few global facts. Today, the global food system is the single biggest driver of global biodiversity loss, and it is responsible for about 30% of all greenhouse gas emissions. It also occupies half of the world's land and uses up 70% of its fresh water. So it's very resource consuming. But shockingly, it's estimated that 1/3 of all the food in the world is going to waste. And on the other side, we all know that there are quite some share of the population which faces hunger. And unfortunately, tourism with its food services is a big contributor to this food loss. For the hotel and restaurant industry, the estimated food waste is about up to 60%, and this is mainly due to overproduction and leftovers of guests. Reducing food waste is not only a serious environmental issue, but also an economic issue, because tourism companies lose a lot of money. It's estimated that they lose about $100 billion each year due to food waste. So you can see these are all very good reasons why the tourism industry has an important role to play in reducing this food waste. And on the one hand, to develop a more sustainable food offer in the businesses, but also on the other hand, engaging the guests in this reduction targets. Could you please go to the next slide? So where is all this food waste generated? Food waste arises across 4 areas of food services. With overproduction, where you can see it's making the largest contribution with about 45%, followed by customer leftovers, so leftovers at the plates with 30%, production with 20%, in storage with 5%. So the majority of cost waste lies in the cost of food purchase, which is over 50%, and labor, which is required to process the food. So these 2 components alone equate to almost 90% of all the costs which are related to food waste. You can see this in detail on the 2 charts. So please, next slide. Yeah, so waste management is very essential in tourism businesses. It's something which has to be considered throughout the entire food production process in food services. And on this slide, you can see the 4 stages of food production. And waste management has to be considered in each of the
I'm sorry,
stages.
Dagmar.
Yeah?
I think we lost the interpreter.
Okay.
Can we wait for a second?
Yes, of course.
Please continue, Dagmar.
Okay, so waste management, as I said, has to be considered in each of these 4 stages. So it starts with the procurement of food, where one has to consider aspects such as storage, so that you have a low risk of spoilage, for example. Then the preparation, where staff should handle food with minimal waste. The presentation, where the focus is on buffets outlays or serving sizes, and then finally the consumption of the guests with the plate leftovers. At all the stages of food production, waste is generated, and therefore these processes have to be managed carefully. So next slide, please. So what can be done in order to reduce food waste? You see here the food waste hierarchy, which shows reduction and cost saving opportunities for businesses. The preferred solution is always to prevent food waste from occurring in the first place, and then in this, in the prevention, we have to consider 2 food waste categories. One is the food waste which still can be eaten or reused or redistributed to people, or also used as animal feed. And then the other category would be the non-edible food waste, which can be either further treated and to be used as compost or energy or heat, or it has to go to landfill, which is of course the least attractive option, because then it is really waste. So implementing an effective food management strategy always requires the support and collaboration of all staff. It also needs clear leadership and a culture that is committed to reduce food waste. And also very important is a continuous communication with the staff, and also the empowerment of staff. Also, measuring food waste generation is an important task, because then you know about how much and where food waste is generated, and then you can actually set food waste reduction targets and decide on prevention measures, or to better manage the food waste recovery and disposal processes. So next slide, please. So to implement a successful food reduction policy or strategy, it's really important to identify the reduction potential for the waste. And therefore, it's important to know where, when, why, and how much waste is generated in the daily operations. So as I said, food waste measurement is very important because the measurement data forms the basis for finding out the causes for food waste and also to develop practical measures, which not only lead to the waste reduction, but also cost savings. When measuring food waste, it is important to set the scope and timing first. So in which food outlets, do you do the measurement, and when and how long should food waste be measured? And there are some, or usually the measurement process includes 4 steps. This is to segregate the food waste into separate bins, to weight each of these waste bins, then to identify where the food waste comes from and what type of food is left. In this also customer feedback might be very helpful to determine the reason why food is not eaten, and then to specify the total amount of waste and the related cost of this food waste. So after this process of measurement has been completed, and you know about the total amount of food waste and costs, it's important to set waste reduction targets and to engage the staff to actually implement appropriate measures. Also, raising general awareness of food waste is always important, also including the guests, because that automatically reduces the level of waste. Next slide. The next slide, please. Sorry, I see that it's here. So I talked about this food measurement and how important it is, and I would like to share a good example where this was implemented in 10 hotels, in Rhodes, in Greece, and in Canary Islands. And the aim of this initiative was to lower the food waste in the hotel restaurant. So it started with monitoring and analyzing the food waste. So they got an idea where the food waste occurred. After this analysis, training sessions took place with kitchen and service staff, and they have implemented 3 measures for food waste reduction. So very simple measures, like using smaller containers and plates in the buffet, the live cooking station, and a better communication between service and kitchen staff, where the service staff communicated regular updates about occupancy rates in the restaurants during buffet times. Also, the guests were informed about the waste reduction measures. And the results you can hear on the slides, the results were very convincing because the participating hotels have reduced their food waste in the summer season by 25 to 30%, which also led to a significant cost reduction. So this is a very good example how you can really save or reduce waste and save money with this measurement of food waste and implementing some very simple measures in your hotel. Next slide, please. So here you just see a few good initiatives which provide resources and tools which can support in setting up such food measurement processes in hotels and restaurants. Some are really good smart mobile apps for measurement. Some are referring to weighting systems, and they all provide a really great support to implement such food waste measurement in hotel and restaurant businesses. Next slide, please. So after having analyzed the sources of food waste, it is easy to implement, or maybe not so easy, but you know at least where and what to implement as food waste reduction measures. Here in this slide, you see a very short summary of measures, how this reduction can be achieved. So as said before, preventing food waste should be top priority. Not only it will save money, but also valuable resources. You can prevent food waste with different measures, but there is no universal catalog of measures which can be adapted to all businesses. Instead, each hotel and restaurant must develop its own solution. And when doing this, it's best to work together with the staff from the relevant departments, which have the good insights. So what are some examples of measures for reducing food waste? First of all, you can start with optimizing your purchasing procedures. So because this prevents stock loss and spoilage. So ordering the right amount of the right types of food and keeping accurate records of your existing stock will result in this waste reduction. Also, a good way to promote food, which is, or excessive food, which is stored, you can promote a dish of the day, for example, to use excessive food stored in your fridge. So then production waste is another area. Especially the kitchen is a place where there is most control over food, but it's also a large contributor to overall food waste. So we saw in the chart that production creates a lot of waste. So maintaining good practices in the kitchen can make a big difference. So for example, the nose to tail approach is one way to do that, where you use up all the parts from an animal, or to use standardized recipes. And for this, using a computer-based system for recipe management is also of great help. Preventing overproduction is one of the biggest drivers of food waste. And this refers especially to buffet-style meals. So how to set up the buffet in a way to reduce the food waste is very important. Also preventing plate leftovers, where the guests come into the place. So a clear communication through the menu at the buffet and by serving service staff can make a big difference. So you have to make the guests aware of this problem of food waste. So communication is really a key issue. For food waste recovery and recycling, this refers to food which is not edible anymore. So composting or converting food into energy might be options for that. And of course, together with this food waste reduction measures, also reducing packaging waste is important. So there you have to work with your suppliers to find good solutions. Next slide, please. So this is just a glimpse of reduction measures. There are many more which you can make. Okay, a good example for upcycling packaging waste is the initiative of Paloma Hotels in Turkey. They have designed usable products from packaging waste. So what they do is in the mini club or also with their staff, they use packaging waste to produce handicrafts and toys for the children. And in addition, around the premises, you can also find these upcycled items, such as you can see here in the picture, waste bins at the front of the entrance of the hotel. So this is a very creative approach to reduce packaging waste. Next slide, please. I've already mentioned several times that the guests also play an important role in the reduction of waste. In our studies, we have also conducted a survey about food consumption behavior on holidays with more than 7,000 German package travelers. And one of the results is that tourists accept smaller portions of food offered on vacations. This is very important because often, buffets or even plates are oversized, and even so, tourists are willing to actually accept smaller portions. So introducing food waste reduction measures is definitely something which is also supported by the guests if it's done in the right way. And please, can you go to the next slide, which is already the final slide, because it refers to another study we did with guests and food waste reduction. In 2017, we have done a project where we have developed communication tools to communicate two aspects of sustainable dining to the guests. We have focused on promoting local products and also to the reduction of waste. We have developed these communication tools in a co-design process with hotels in Austria, Spain, and Turkey. And we have conducted experiments to assess and analyze their impacts, the impacts of these communication tools. The tools which were addressing food waste have resulted in a 15% reduction of food waste on guest plates. And the instruments which we have developed and also the results of our experiments are published in a guide, and they include a set of communication tools which can be used to communicate waste reduction targets to the guests. So with this short summary of the main aspects of food waste in the hospitality industry, I hope that you got an overview of the waste reduction potential in the hotel businesses and gastronomic businesses. But in order to be successful, it is for sure very important to bring management, staff, and guests on board to tackle this topic. So this sums up my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Благодарю вас, Dagmar. Я знаю, что вы
Thank you very
очень...
much, Dagmar. I know that you've been closely working with UNEP, with our team. And the thing is, our organization, the expert organization, which uses its own instruments and which are based on the scientific researches and analysis. And therefore, I would like to thank you, Dagmar, for your knowledge, for your cooperation with us. It is very important for us to understand what kind of trends, what kind of directions of development are there in this sector. And therefore, everything what was articulated today, I think they will be used by us. And for me personally, it was very interesting to know that the people who are on vacations, tourists, they prefer to get small dishes on a smaller plate by many reasons. Thank you very much, Dagmar. Before I give the floor to our next distinguished expert, I would like to give some insights about the topic. So I have a very small presentation here, a couple of slides. I'm going to share my screen, and I would like to draw your attention to the following. And during the recent 5 decades, our population has increased, has doubled. The extraction of natural resources and fossil fuels increased 3 times, and the GDP increased 4 times, and to the day, only 1% of the population of the world is richer than the remaining part of the population. Therewith, over 800 million people are starving, over 2 billion are having malnutrition. At the same time, we have 2 billion of people suffering from obesity. And therewith, 30% of our food are getting into our garbage bins today. To the day, apart from we can say that our society today is generating a lot of waste, because 80% of our products is being thrown away after a single use or upon 6 months after purchasing. And nowadays, 1 truck of waste can get to the ocean every 1 minute. And I would like to draw your attention that if we do not change our attitude, our consumers' attitude to the resources and to the planet in 2025 or by 2030, as our analyticians and experts say, we would need 3 planets in order to satisfy our needs. These are the very scaring numbers, and now the United Nations and our organizations, the UNEP, are taking the incredible attempts or efforts in order to communicate this to each of us. If we do not change our attitude to the food, to the resources, to plastic, and to consumption, then unfortunately we can be in a very difficult situation, and this situation will only be complicating. And this was a small deviation from the session, but I wanted all of them to understand the situation. The situation, in fact, is very serious, and everyone should make the right decision. Therefore, our webinar, our experts are helping us to better understand these issues. And I would like to give the floor Mrs. Clara Lidberg, the founder and general director of the company PANTER. She's an environmentalist, a lawyer, previous counselor of the Minister of Environment of Sweden. The topic is culture, takeaway culture and delivery of the food in Sweden. So the floor is yours, and we will help you with demonstration of your presentations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. My name is Clara Lidberg, and I'm the CEO and founder of PANTER. There will be a presentation coming soon. It's about the collaboration mainly with the second largest city in Sweden, Gothenburg, about reducing single-use takeaway packaging in Sweden. So PANTER, I will tell you a little bit about PANTER so you get a context. We are a system for reusable takeaway packaging. So instead of single use, we use reusable cups and food containers that is washed at the restaurants that are our customers. And we're also doing events like sports events, concerts, where the use of single use is immense. And we can reuse this by using reusables instead, that are washed and used for thousands of times instead of only one. The next slide, please. Like you mentioned, the use of single use is an incredibly large problem. And the switch to reusables can actually create a lot of opportunities. Of course, the reduction of carbon emission is one, but also a cleaner, nicer city for all the habitants, where you don't see a lot of trash and garbage in the streets and parks. But it also creates local jobs, as we do the washing locally, and that these simple tasks are needed for a lot of the population in every country. The next slide, please. I will tell you a little bit about Sweden and the situation in Europe. We have in Europe decided 4 years ago on a directive, a single-use plastic directive that forces all the member states to reduce the use of single-use plastics, plastic bags, but also takeaway packaging. Basically, all the single-use plastic that ends up in nature and in the water. So in Sweden, we do takeouts a lot. Almost half of the meals are served as takeouts. This is coffee, this is lunch, this is dinners. This is a very common behavior, and it's growing, especially with the younger generations that are used to doing takeouts coffee. And they even use single-use when they dine in, for example, at McDonald's and other fast food chains. So in Sweden, we are a small country. We're only 10 million people, but we use 2 billion single-use takeaway packaging per year. And takeaway packaging is a problem as it becomes one of the most common litter at the streets and the beaches and the parks in Sweden. The next slide, please. So PANTER, we're on a mission to combat this use of single use by replacing them with reusable takeaway packaging. And I'm sure you're interested in knowing a little bit about the collaboration we have with the Gothenburg city that started last year. Because if we're going to reach sustainability in all sectors, it's all about collaboration between companies, small and big, but also with the public sector. And the Gothenburg city is a perfect example of this. They actually contacted us at PANTER and asked us, could you implement a system for reusable packaging in Gothenburg? So we did that together with the city, and we launched at different restaurants, cafes, and also did events for the Gothenburg city last year. And this was for a startup like PANTER, this was a really important collaboration. And of course, it has positive effects as well in the city, as the litter reduction reduces a lot. And they get a cleaner city, and they burn less single-use plastic in their incineration facilities. And actually right now, beneath me, there's a huge event going on here in Stockholm on food tech. And here, the Stockholm municipality also invited PANTER to provide these reusable cups for the event. So all the hundreds of people beneath me are actually drinking their coffee now in reusable cups instead of single use. And it's so fulfilling to see that the change is actually not that difficult. People don't really react. It's like a normal behavior, and it's so important for the event industry. The next slide, please. So this is a little bit about what PANTER does. To give out a reusable takeaway packaging is good, but getting it back is even more important, because otherwise it becomes a reusable single-use product, and that's not better for the environment. So what we do, we put the QR codes on all the packaging, so the guests get connected to the packaging, and if they don't return it, then we can add a fee of 10 euros that we credit the guests, so that they will actually return their cup to a restaurant or to the event organizer. And in that, by doing this, we can assure that the cups and the food containers are reused for hundreds of times. And the legislation in Sweden is super important. There is a really important change coming up 1st of January 2024 that says that all restaurants and event organizers have to offer reusable packaging that is part of at the same time they will ban the use of a single-use cup that contains more than 15% plastic. And I would really like to stress that legislation is a very important aspect if we are about to change the use of single-use. The legislation could be, in this case, that you have to offer reusables, but it could also be taxes on single-use or even bans on single-use. And I would like to end with those words. Thank you so much for having me.
Благодарю вас, Клара. Очень интересная презентация.
Thank you, Claire. That was a very interesting presentation. There are some questions as well. It was interesting for us. Without the legislation, the usage of the multi-purpose use, it's quite challenging. It is necessary to implement some changes and amendments into the legislation. If 15% could be allowed, but we are taking it actually for further consideration. You have presented the experience of Sweden, and 1 year ago in Stockholm, there was a conference of a high-level conference under the aegis of UNEP and the government of Sweden, Stockholm plus 50, and these issues once again have been raised on a very high political level. The issues of the triple planetary crisis, where the pollution issues and the plastic issue is included. Thank you very much for joining us. So please be with us. We will have other questions to you as well. So now we're just behind the schedule. I didn't want to stop our speakers because this is a very interesting presentations. And not all the time we have this kind of opportunities to get familiarized with the world experience. So anyway, we can actually, I would like to give the floor, not less important, Mr. Christian de Boer, representative of the Chenta River Park. I heard the presentation of Christian in the past. I was very impressed with the experience, which is in Thailand. So could you share with us the way you are managing the plastic and food waste and other resources in the touristic sector? So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and a very good afternoon from Cambodia, here in another part of Asia. First of all, thank you for taking the time to listen to me. And having just been to your part of the world, I was allowed to see Dimash in concert in Almaty, and I have to say I'm super impressed with Central Asia. So thank you. I hope you can all hear me. Jai House River Park, a tiny boutique hotel here in Siem Reap, minutes away from the spectacular Angkor Wat, the world's biggest temple, basically. We're a very small hotel, and we have set out to do things differently right from the beginning. Can you show my slides, please? Let's wait until the slides come up. Yep. That's the logo of my hotel. And then the next slide, please. There we are. We have indeed been single-use plastic free right from the beginning in 2016. And we are now ranked #1 here in Cambodia for the past 6 or so years. We've also just last week been nominated again for the 4th time in a row in the top 25 hotels in the world, according to TripAdvisor. We have a 4.9 ranking on Google. We're also the busiest hotel in town. Now, as a tiny hotel, I have no sales team. I have never traveled anywhere. I've never been overseas to the likes of ITM, WTM, ILTM, or any other trade shows, and we work solely by word of mouth. I do believe we actually walk the talk, so we do what we say we do, and we work and operate with 100% Cambodian full-time staff, which makes us a little bit different than most other hotels. Next slide, please. Now, how did we start? Next slide. How did we start? I happened to see this particular picture, which really shocked me to a core. We, as has earlier been mentioned, we simply cannot continue. And I believe that change starts with every single one of us. Every single one of us has to make a bigger difference. Whilst I cannot change the world, I do not have that much power, I can change my world. I can change the world here in my little hotel, which is where it all started. The next slide, please. Now, so we started working with local stakeholders. We partnered with the key stakeholders here in our local community in Siem Reap by doing very simple cleanups in and around Siem Reap. Over time, we've now planted 2,150 or so mature trees, and whilst also at the same time having many meetings with our delivery people, our staff, anyone really who has been in contact with the hotel to explain the philosophy of being single-use plastic free. Where in the olden days, our bananas or our fruit would come into plastic bags, we handed each of our suppliers a linen bag. And so they would put the bananas into a linen bag, and when they deliver that, we give them an empty linen bag back. For meat and fish, that would have been Tupperware bags. Like the previous lady from Sweden said, those bags were actually the boxes were actually IKEA boxes, which are reusable and can be washed time and time again. And we partnered with like-minded travel agencies and other hotels here in Siem Reap, because if we work together, we make a much bigger difference. And I think we all agree that urgency now is very much needed. The next slide, please. I think if we look very briefly at one particular country, there's one country here in Asia, next slide, which has in that one country 867,000 hotel rooms on a daily basis. 860,000 hotel rooms, 4 plastic bottles each. That is 3.5 million plastic water bottles daily. That's a shocking number. The next slide, please. The 3.5 million bottles daily is actually 105 million plastic water bottles a month, or 1.2 billion with a B plastic water bottles a year. And that's just in one country. Imagine if we all at all countries in Asia. It becomes a rather shocking statistic, knowing that most of those plastic water bottles, if not all, are actually burned or ending up in the rivers, in the rice fields, in the countryside, or in the stunning scenery near Aktau. Next slide, please. The consumers have been educated. More and more people are aware of the dangers of plastic. Next slide. I think you can see in the numerous media appearances that the consumers are ready. The consumers are ready for an alternative, but we as tourism providers, we as hotels, we have to take the lead. We have to provide that alternative. Can we do the next slide? The many articles in Newsweek, in The Guardian, in the USA Today, all provide more than enough reasons to explain that the consumers are actually ready. As said, all it takes is for us who are in the tourism industry to simply provide that lead, which is.
Christian, I'm
yes?
sorry, we're having a technical program. Коллеги, пожалуйста, нам нужно следующий слайд показать.
Distinguished colleagues, we have some technical problems. We need to demonstrate the next slide, please.
Christian, you can proceed now. Thank you.
Thank you. So here's just a small snapshot of some of the media that we have been in, and which explains to our guests who choose to stay with us of why we're single-use plastic free. And I have to say, for those of you checking on TripAdvisor, 0 complaints in the past 6.5 years, not one single negative issue, only positive stories, and only people telling us do more, do bigger, do better, spread the word. Can we do the next slide? So how did we do that, for instance, with plastic water bottles? I started a tiny initiative called Refill Not Landfill. And I started that really just for us here in Siem Reap. Can we do the next slide? This is the bottle that is in every single one of our minibars, and that we give to our guests. They can use it, then bring it home, and continue to stop using plastic. Each of those bottles comes with I'm not sure if you can see it, a QR code. And given the fact that all of us these days travel with our mobile phone, our respective phones already have the GPS technology loaded onto each of our telephones. Now, I have approached all of our partner restaurants and tourism specialists here in Siem Reap that if my guest turns up with one of those bottles, if they would give them complimentary free drinking water, to which all of them agreed. For the very simple reason, because it brings in more people into their establishments. And more people means more revenue, because once they're in a cafe, they'll also order a coffee or a cake or something else. And thus they've seen incremental revenue. The participation on this program is completely free and is solely aimed at reducing the use of single-use plastic, reducing the use of single-use plastic water bottles and everything else. The map, which automatically appears the moment somebody scans the QR code, has been highlighted and will tell people the closest refill station to wherever they are using the earlier mentioned GPS technology. It's a very simple initiative, but I can tell you it works, and it's something that guests love. On the next slide, you'll see a tiny map of just my little village here in Siem Reap. And which outlines all of the refill stations here in the tiny village of Siem Reap. The initiative actually now has expanded and is in 19 countries. Anything from Cambodia, where it all started, but also in Laos, in Vietnam, in Bali, and even as far as numerous places in South America. Then, of course, the most important thing, the costs. Next slide, please. The cost of this water bottle is about $1.20, $1.10 per bottle. What we have done here in Siem Reap, I have simply increased my room rates by $2 to cover the cost for that. Next slide. And the bottle has actually become a surprisingly good marketing tool and a fantastic souvenir. Almost all, and I really think 90% of my guests bring the bottle home, and I regularly get pictures sent back to me of people using their refillable bottle anywhere else on our lovely little planet. So it's also a very good sales and marketing effort, I think. Let's go to the next slide. Are there any negative points? To be honest, so far, no, and that's in 6 years. Our guests truly adore it. We've never had a single negative comment, and we've never had a single negative review on either TripAdvisor or any other social media platform. The guests, as I said, bring the bottle home and really just congratulate us. The positive side, we're massively reducing the abuse of plastic. It really is quite a good marketing tool. It's obviously a great souvenir for guests. And more importantly for us as a small hotel, it has actually increased our direct bookings. People read about it, they see the bottle from their friends, and on their next trip to see Cambodia / Angkor Wat, they actually book us direct. So it has increased our direct bookings, it has increased our satisfaction levels amongst our guests, and thus also it has actually increased the average rate that people are paying to stay with us here in Siem Reap. Next slide. Now, some of you must be thinking, oh, how does that hotel guarantee clean drinking water towards their guests? First of all, it's obviously not in my benefit to provide anyone with dirty drinking water. So we have partnered with mostly privately owned businesses like restaurants, bars, and stores, and even now some banks in Myanmar that all provide the clean drinking water to their guests. The aforementioned businesses, they've indeed simply added their Google location onto the dedicated Google Earth page, and then their location appears once people use the QR code. Most of the businesses have also added a sticker on their actual business to further increase awareness. And the benefit, and this is really quite a big thing for the participating businesses, has been one, increased brand awareness, drastically increased foot traffic, and therefore increased revenue, additional marketing opportunities, and surprisingly also return of guests. So this is how we, as a tiny hotel here in Siem Reap, have been able to stop using plastic water bottles. And as I said, it's been surprisingly easy, and it's been really well received by our guests. And we do the next slide. Now, if I wanted us to be a single-use plastic-free, we had to do obviously much more than that. About 6 years ago, I sent 2 elderly gentlemen out to a next door province to pick up all of the plastic bags from the rice fields next to us. Those plastic bags, dirty plastic bags, were all brought back to Siem Reap, washed and knitted into what you see in the picture or here, laundry bags. This bag is 6 years old and really looks brand new, and again is a massive hit by our guests. We actually sell them as well now because a lot of guests want to bring them home, and thus creating more jobs. Now, we employ a few people to create bamboo straws for us. Again, never had an issue. We have glass water bottles in each of our rooms, and we use glass refillable amenities for our shampoo, for our conditioner, things like that, which we make ourselves under the banner Gaia Organics here in Siem Reap, and thus again creating jobs. I believe that it really is time we take immediate action. And I am honestly surprised on how easy it is. I am surprised about the financial rewards we've had as a result of this initiative by simply more guests booking us, by simply guests demanding the change, just by guests choosing us. Now, food cost is a major issue. So as a hotel operational in one of the poorest countries on the planet, we really do not waste any food. We any of the items that we don't use for our breakfast buffet for our guests automatically will go to our staff and will become lunch or dinner. And any of the items that are really not suitable for anyone will be turned into either cooking oil for cars, or diesel fuel for cars, sorry, or will become food for a pig farm not too far away from here, which really altogether means that our waste is very, very small. We only have a very limited amount. I truly invite all of you to look up on our TripAdvisor, on our Google pages, and see the fantastic comments from our guests on this subject. As I said earlier, I cannot change the world. I'm too small for that. But I can change my world. And that comment is valid for all of us. And if we partner together, if we work together, and we all do our little bit, this world would have a much better future. If any of you wants to have more information, feel free to reach out to me personally. I'm more than happy to give a one-on-one explanation of what we did and how we did it, to make sure that more people can actually stop using plastic. And I hope the next time I'll be back in Central Asia to see the other parts of your spectacular countries, there will be less plastic floating around. So on behalf of all of us here in Cambodia, thank you very much for listening, and good luck.
Благодарю вас, Кристиан. Какие правильные...
Christian, thank you very much. It was very good and wise words, and it was a wise marketing approach with these bottles, with these cachets for laundry. And I think that majority is interested with such tools. And when you next time come to our Central Asia, I think that we will have a chance to discuss how we can do this training with your immediate participation. And we will hope to see your bottles and these cachets. Thank you very much. And before we start our next presentation, I would like to give the opportunity to give an answer to our experts for their answers and to clarify for our participants some issues that they are facing. And I see in the chat box, I see the question to Christian. During your presentation, you focused on the statistics of one Asian country. Could you please clarify what country is this? And thank you in advance. Christian, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now? I think you should.
Yes.
Okay. That country was Korea. South Korea. The numbers are really quite staggering, and actually shocking. Once we start to think about the amount of plastic water bottles, it's a shocking statistic.
Благодарю вас. Пожалуйста, коллеги, если
Thank you
будут
very much. Dear colleagues, if you have any questions, please raise your hands so that we can see your hands.
Пока вопросов я не вижу.
So far, I don't see any questions and any hands rising. And please introduce yourself from what your name and which organization.
Я из Узбекистана.
I'm from Uzbekistan. I'm working on the waste recycling sector. I have a question to the speaker. I know that a huge amount of plastics are in the ocean. Nowadays, it is a very serious problem to the fauna, to fishes, and are there any solutions such as degradation, using some bacteria which help degrading such wastes? Are there any solutions? And could you please share if there is any such solutions? Seyitov, thank you very much for your question, and I would take the responsibility on myself to give some information. The thing is, there was a very serious event held in Paris where they discussed with all the participating countries the opportunities of creating such an agreement which will oblige any countries to deal with plastic issues. And of course, UN is focusing on the sciences to get these issues solved and on know-how and technologies too. And there are subdivisions of the United Nations, such as UNITAR and many others, which are considering such opportunities at this time. And on the social media, we see that there are some bacteria that can consume the plastic. As long as we are asking this question to our experts, and on those presentations that were made, I would leave your question to my colleague, Svetlana Mikhailovna, who will be speaking next. And I would like to invite those who has the questions to the previous presentations that were already made. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask so that we can move on. I don't see any hands rising. I think that it was very interesting information. And on my part, I would like to address to the experts and ask them to what extent it is important in this work. It is important to share or to have a hand of a partner of, in this case, hotel, restaurant, or to what extent these are the sustainable and to what extent they are needed for managing the plastic and food wastes. Maybe Clara will tell us in Sweden that you have mentioned that in Sweden that you have such a circular cycle which allows using the dishes. Maybe you will say a couple of words. For instance, if you have any kind of collaboration in between enterprises in one and the same sector. It is very interesting because in our region, there are a network which is actively working, which unites the organizations in this field, and to what extent it is critical and to what extent it would be beneficial to develop these networks based on your experience. And anyone wants to answer this question? And this was the question to our experts. I don't hear the translation interpretation.
importance of networking and networks in the management of plastic and food waste. How important is this to introduce the cycle, I don't know how to call it, reform or process?
Yeah, I can provide a short answer to that. And I think I mentioned it in the presentation. It is very important that you collaborate along the whole supply chain, because especially packaging waste, that can't be, solved alone. So you need the suppliers, and you have to work with your suppliers about this transportation and packaging logistics. Yeah, this is very, very important.
I fully agree with you. I also think that we need to learn from each other, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel 700 times. When we implemented it here in Siem I'm sure we did some things that could have been done better. I would love to tell anyone on what we now think in 2023 is the easiest way to implement all of this. I would see nothing rather than more hotels being single-use plastic free, because as I said, I don't think we have much time left. So I think we need to learn from each other. We need to grow, and we need to be open to new ideas and different ways of thinking. What I just heard from the lady in Sweden, super interesting, and I hope that will be implemented in more countries in the world. And have the same with the way we went single-use plastic free. If there's anyone that I can help, even if only one person in one hotel in one country, I'm more than happy, because then I've achieved what I wanted to do. I'm right now in talks with the city of Seoul on trying to help them going completely single-use plastic free. As I said, I'm more than willing to go anywhere for a few days, for a week, or for whatever, how long, to help people make an effort and create a change and implement this, well, as soon as we can, I think.
Спасибо вам большое, Dagmar. Спасибо, Christian.
Thank you, Dagmar. Thank you, Christian, for your dedication, and it is really impressing and inspiring. Thank you. I see the hand, Ayjan. Now, please introduce yourself. Which country are you from and which organization you are representing? Good afternoon. I'm very happy that I'm joining this Zoom meeting. My name is Ayjan. I'm a lawyer and environmentalist, and I'm helping the public foundation, Umayene Jarkan, which is in a biosphere zone. It's a cool in Cholpanata city. Now I would like to ask the question to Mr. Christian, which presented us very interesting information, and I would like to know, I know that they are providing the water free for all who are willing to, so that who want to collect the water into into their bottles. And in Isikul we have this foundation. I would like to share my own experience in order to avoid these single-use plastics we are introducing, and we are propagandizing amongst the tourists to use our products, which was made by recycling the single-use plastics, so that they are not buying these plastic bags and plastic caps anymore. And recently we launched an Isikul to stop using these plastic bags. And there was a very good event, and the solution of the local community, local authorities, and our foundation. We have our farm, eco farm, and so we use this biohumus. So we are recycling the food wastes, and so we are providing the tourist services there, And we are also recycling the food waste, and we would like to disseminate this to all the tourist farms, tourist firms, and so they are using different kind of worms, Californian worms, for recycling the food waste in order to maintain the fertility of our land and to preserve our sickle. It is a very good event which is being conducted in a local level. Thank you. Thank you very much. And unfortunately, we have just finished our Q&A sessions, and later we will give an answer to your questions. Let's respect. And so, Christian, there was a question to you. Could you please answer this question, Christian?
Айжан, пожалуйста, очень коротко еще раз озвучьте ваш вопрос.
So I would just like to clarify on using these bottles. Is it provided for free for all who want to get in the country where Christian works? And how do they get this water? Do they clean this water by themselves, or do they buy the water somewhere? If these people come to get the water using your bottles.
Yeah, no, for the guests that are staying in my hotel, the bottle is completely free. The bottle, the guests that are using certain tour operators, high-end tour operators, the bottles are free. And now there are many more hotels. There's about 12 hotels in Siem Reap that all provide this particular bottle to their guests for free. The locations, and I think it's about 250 locations in Siem Reap, in the village of Siem Reap, where they all get free drinking water. The benefit for the cafes and for the restaurants here is that it will bring them more food traffic, more people into their cafe. And experience has shown us that the moment you get more people into your cafe, a small portion will indeed just fill up their water bottle and then go, but the vast majority of people will fill up their water bottle and then also order a coffee or a cake or lunch perhaps. So they've seen an incremental amount of revenue and thus profits in the cafes and the bars that are participating. But as I said, most hotels have simply increased their room rates by about $2 to be able to afford this bottle and be able to give it for free to their respective guests. I hope that answers.
Спасибо, Ян. Да, действительно, опять же, умный маркетинговый ход.
Thank you very much. It is a very smart marketing approach, and I think now we need to move forward along our program, and we have very restricted time frame. Aijan told us about how in Isikul they are working on plastic bags, and it is great that Kyrgyzstan now is actively, as a pioneer, is trying to address these issues, not only in recreational areas, but in the legislation level too. And here I would like to say that perhaps our event that we conducted previously with our partners, with ASG Central Asia and Department of Tourism on global tourist initiative on plastics. Now it is bringing corresponding benefits as we disseminated this information very actively, and Kyrgyzstan was invited, and organizations of Kyrgyzstan was invited to join this initiative, and government of the Kyrgyz Republic showed its interest. And in this term, I'm very happy to give the floor to my colleague, Svetlana, a coordinator of the global program. The global program, Sustainable Tourism on the Planet. It is a representative office of the Secretariat of the Global Program 10YP UNEP. The floor is yours, Svetlana.
We hope to listen your information with the demonstration of your video on the roadmap on the reduction of the food waste in touristic sector. The floor is yours. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very pleased to participate in this webinar. Unfortunately, this presentation will in English. I live in France, and it's really hard for me to explain, to speak in Russian, but nevertheless, I will
Switching to
try
English
to
now,
respond
ladies and gentlemen,
to your
excellencies, very honored to be here.
questions as much
Very,
as
very happy also to see my colleagues, Dagmar and Christian, with whom we've been collaborating quite a lot in this program that I will introduce you today. So next slide, please. As Madina just mentioned, I was invited to present to you the One Planet Sustainable Tourism Program. Можно перейти на следующий слайд, пожалуйста? And спасибо большое. The One Planet Sustainable Tourism Program, it's a global network. So we have governments, we have businesses, academia, NGOs, and business associations. Madina just earlier mentioned that it was very key to ensure that there is a collaboration between different stakeholders in the tourism industry to ensure every progress. So this is basically what we are striving for. And our key objective is to support the implementation of sustainable and circular consumption and production in the tourism industry globally. So the work of program articulates around 3 major environmental agendas, which is climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. And the objective is to provide direct assistance to tourism industry stakeholders so that they have the right framework of action and solutions to help addressing this triple planetary crisis. And by framework of action, I mean that our program offers vision, but also concrete tools that are adapted to the reality and specificity of the tourism sector. For example, what are the measures that a Ministry of Tourism can take to support a fight against plastic pollution? What are the actions that can be taken by organizations such as Booking.com to help tackling plastic pollution in the context of their own operations and their own work? So this is the type of guidance that our program is providing. Next slide, please. Следующий, пожалуйста, slide. So our program has currently 3 work streams. One that addresses the climate action in tourism, which is called Glasgow Declaration on Climate Action in Tourism. Second, the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative that Madina just referred to, that addresses the issue of plastic pollution. And the third one is addressing the issue of food waste. And before I go in depth into the presentation, I wanted also to mention that 2 of our initiatives, the one on climate and the one on plastics, they were actually officially recognized during the 9th Environment for Europe ministerial conference in Nicosia last year. Some of you may have participated in this conference, and in the declaration, ministerial declaration, our 2 initiatives were recognized as key to advance circularity in the tourism sector and in pan-European region. And those were the 2 only tourism instruments that were actually expressly acknowledged in the declaration. So, which is of course for us some pride and sense of achievement. So now, of course, what we need to make sure that all of this great guidance is effectively implemented by the industry. And today my intervention, as Madina mentioned, will focus on 2 topics, plastics and food waste. Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. So as, again, Madina, I'm referring to you a lot today, my apologies, but as you just mentioned today, well, actually all this week, there are negotiations going on in Paris, and I'm based in Paris, on the future treaty on ending plastic pollution. So it feels like it's really a perfect timing to present to you the initiative that supports the readiness of the tourism sector towards legal changes that will be certainly induced by the future treaty. So the objective of the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative is to end plastic pollution that is generated by operations of the tourism industry. And we do this by promoting solutions that are circular economy responses. The initiative was launched in January 2020, so just before the COVID crisis. And despite this, as you all know very well, very complex context for the tourism industry, the initiative actually encountered quite a lot of success and enthusiasm. And it was our very first commitment-based initiative that we developed in consultation with tourism companies, business associations, as well as experts in circular economy of plastic pollution. So, and also just a side note, the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative acts as sectoral interface of the New Plastics Economy Global Commitment of Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Those who are working on the topic of plastics have already certainly heard about this global commitment framework. Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. So, to become signatories, by the way, for instance, very honored to say that Jaya House, that was just Christian, that was just presenting his excellent work. He's also part of our signatories of our initiative and absolutely great advocate of the work that we are trying to collectively push for. So to become signatories, we request businesses, destinations, as well as supporting organizations. By supporting organizations, I mean NGOs, business associations, so on. So they are all requested to develop commitments around following principles that you can see listed on the screen. And they are listed in a very specific order from the most impactful to the least impactful. So the order, the hierarchy is actually very important in how you prioritize also the actions to tackle plastic pollution. So first priority, take ambitious action on elimination of problematic and unnecessary plastic packaging and items. Second, we request commitments around introduction of reuse models, which are most of the time more sustainable than single-use alternatives, even if single-use is not plastic. So yeah, just to reiterate, reuse models, absolute priority when we are looking for alternatives to plastics. Then third, in case some plastic items and packaging can't be avoided, we encourage tourism stakeholders to collaborate with suppliers to obtain packaging with increased recycled content. We also recommend to work with municipalities, with waste management companies to improve recycling and composting rates of plastics. Again, collaboration, coordination, and value chain level is absolutely key. A company, a standalone company, can't solve all of the issues, even though, of course, a lot of ambitious initiative can be implemented. But still, if you want to address all of the aspects, it's very key to ensure that there is coordination with local authorities, that there is coordination with recycling entities, so on. And all of these requirements then in our initiative, they are adapted to different types of stakeholders and specificities of their operations. And in few moments, I will explain you the modality for commitment for different types of stakeholders, basically what is required from a government, what is required from an accommodation business, so on. And of course, last point, the annual reporting on progress is essential for the transparency. It is essential to track results from one year to another. So it's also the requirement of our initiative, because in the past years, we have seen a lot of pledging mechanisms where companies, governments were saying, we will do this, we will do that, we will reduce plastics, ban this, but then what in practice, what is happening in practice, we don't know. If there is no reporting, if there is no measurement, we don't know. We do realize in the program that reporting can be very burdensome. Reporting takes time, it's complicated, but for the effective progress, it's just essential. Следующий, пожалуйста, слайд. So which stakeholders can be part of the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative? Very rapidly, because I've mentioned this already, all tourism industry stakeholders have a role to play. It just will be implemented in a different manner. From an accommodation company, we would ask to set clear targets on, for instance, elimination of plastics in at least 3 areas, for instance, rooms, kitchens, bathrooms, on introduction of reuse models. From online booking organization company like booking.com, we will request them to use the message, inform the companies that are featured on their website about sustainability solutions, about the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative. The ministries of tourism, they will be asked to work in collaborative manner with ministries of environment on how, for instance, tourism industry can effectively support more global policies around circular economy of plastics. How, on the level of the tourism sector, ministries of tourism can promote solutions, so maybe development of communication campaigns, so on. So how basically the ministries of tourism can be complementary to the work that is undertaken on economy-wide level, for instance, by ministries of industry or ministries of economy or environment again. Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. Следующий, пожалуйста. Спасибо. So the initiative has reached already 162 signatories, and it has been growing very steadily since its very launch, so 3 years ago now. A large proportion of the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative signatories are actually businesses, so we do work directly a lot with businesses, both very large global companies as well as small and medium enterprises. On the screen you can see example of some of such companies like TUI, Booking.com and Accor and many other global well-known brands. Earlier, I mentioned to you that reporting is mandatory, particularly for destinations, meaning national and local governments and destination management organizations, as well as for large companies. So these stakeholders have to report progress annually through our platform. But then small and medium enterprises, they can disclose their progress through their own communication means, because we understand that very small companies, they simply don't have sufficient human resources to spend their time of reporting. So we are much more flexible when it comes to working with SMEs. And this year, like just a few weeks ago, we finished our pilot reporting exercise. And through this 2022 reporting exercise, we were collecting information on operations undertaken in 21. Year when the sector was actually hugely affected by COVID, but still we managed to find some interesting trends. As an example, one of the interesting findings of the reporting is that largest companies that are part of the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative use an average of 99 grams of plastic packaging and items per guest per night, which then will be providing a baseline for the years to come to measure the progress of reduction of the plastics in their operations. Следующий, пожалуйста. So while the slides are changing, just very rapidly, следующий слайд, пожалуйста, можно? Спасибо большое. So just very briefly, the main trend is that despite the COVID crisis, the companies with which we are working, they persisted in reduction, in elimination of plastics throughout the crisis, and that 70% of commitments implemented in 2021, they tackle plastic reduction mainly in food and drink services and in rooms. So currently the priority is reduction of plastics in customer-facing facilities, which of course makes sense. But and then also almost half of our stakeholders achieved complete elimination, almost complete elimination of plastics in these areas. But then areas such as kitchens still appear as quite problematic, and it's still difficult to eliminate for several of our partners fully plastics in kitchens. One argument is that because sometimes they struggle to find proper alternatives to plastics that would be reusable, even though of course there are already alternatives on the market, and Christian from Jaya House just mentioned some of them, like plastic containers, like from IKEA. Maybe shouldn't be mentioning the brands, but anyway. But then another issue is that that is explained to us by kitchen staff that are working directly on implementation of these commitments, is that sometimes switching to the purchasing in bulk can create food waste issues. So basically we can switch from one issue to another. So it's very important to approach all of this implementation in very methodic manner, and really properly reflect on each of the solutions that we've introduced, so that one issue is not causing another one. Следующий, пожалуйста, слайд. So our signatories actually, they help us identifying the knowledge gaps, the knowledge that is still missing to them to implement these commitments, to reduce single-use plastics, to introduce reuse models. So they help us prioritizing what tools, what recommendations, what methodologies we are developing in our program to support them. The idea is that we consult our industry stakeholders, our network members, on what is needed, and then we develop these tools, this guidance, methodologies in collaboration with them. Because for us, the key importance is to make sure that what we develop in our program is actually really used by the industry. And on the screen, you can see examples of some of the tools and recommendations that we've been developing in the past years. And with the QR code that you can see on the screen, it would lead you to the database of resources where you can download those and many more. As an example, we just recently issued procurement guidance. It has checklists, it has recommended language for tender specifications, it has decision trees for procurement departments and hotels and cruise lines. We also just issued methodology and tools on measurement of plastics and operations of tourism companies. We are currently developing recommendation on integration of circular economy of plastics also in tourism policies. So that basically recommendations that would be really targeting ministries of tourism. The context is that back in 2021, we were undertaking the exercise of review of national tourism policies together with the World Tourism Organization. And we found that globally, only 13 national policies defend the principle of circular economy. 21 policies are eager to reduce single-use plastics, in particular plastic bags or water bottles, and 25 policies highlight the need of reuse products. And as you can see, this is very far from being sufficient, and for us this is very important to improve our capacity to support and advise national government in development of such policies. So that's why we are developing this short policy guidance, which will be really explaining step by step what exactly it means for a Ministry of Tourism to work on circular economy of plastics, so that the Ministry of Tourism doesn't overstep on the competencies, for instance, of a Ministry of Environment, and that there is a real complementarity and collaboration between the two, or more ministry, like depending on the context, of course. So unfortunately, from the tourism policies that refer to circular economy of plastics and that we managed to identify, we didn't find any examples specifically in your region that I could use today to illustrate a good practice. But our database was developed in 2021. So if you are aware of policies, of tourism industry policies that work on circular economy of plastics in your region, we would be very happy to learn about them, to review them, and to add them to our database. So please don't hesitate to share the information. So there are 3 other slides that I initially have foreseen about exactly detailed information about how to join the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative for different stakeholders, but I think I have explained this a bit earlier, and I think I'm running a bit over time, and I would like to have just like to take 3-4 more minutes to present you our food work stream. So if you don't mind, I suggest we go to directly, we skip 3 slides. So можете, пожалуйста, перейти через 3 слайда. So следующий, еще один, еще, вот здесь, спасибо большое. So yeah, as I mentioned, I really would like to spend some time presenting you our work on food waste, but if you have specific questions on how to concretely commit to the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative, at the end of my presentation, I share my email details. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. I would be happy to assist you on really development of exact commitments to become part of the initiative. And this applies, of course, to the government stakeholders and to the businesses. So over is plastics. As the second topic I would like to briefly introduce you today is our work stream on sustainable food systems. It is currently articulated around our global roadmap for food waste reduction in the tourism sector that we will be officially launching later this month. And the roadmap offers a framework for stakeholders to embrace sustainable management of food, so it never becomes waste. Следующий, пожалуйста. Next slide, please. Спасибо. So the current food systems have a huge environmental impact. Many of you know it, but that maybe already. Unsustainable agri-food production is the since various drivers leading to 70% of biodiversity loss, including deforestation, including overfishing. According to various global estimations, around 1/3 of food is wasted. 1/3, just imagine, this is absolutely huge. Also, global food industry has very high impacts in terms of GHG emissions and represents over 30% of GHG emissions, so also huge climate impacts. But on the positive side of things, we consider that food represents also an entry point of transformation of tourism operations and also beyond. What do I mean by this? And I'm sure Dagmar before me already explained this idea, maybe even more in details. Apologies, Dagmar, I connected after your interventions. So just to sum up, more sustainable procurement of food, more sustainable menus, less wasteful consumption, and reduction on food waste can influence not only behavioral change of consumers, but also can induce change in production patterns of food, maybe a tourist sector. So tackling food waste presents also an opportunity to save costs. There is a clear business case, which is, for instance, less obvious when we are talking about reduction of plastics because plastics are cheap. Food waste represents loss in money, and reduction of food waste as a consequence may be perceived as a low-hanging fruit in terms of instruction of sustainability in tourism operations. I'm sorry, I need to close my door because my cat is being very upset with me talking right now to all of you. My apologies for this disturbance. Можно перейти на следующий слайд, пожалуйста? So the importance on environmental and social impacts, as I just explained, of food waste is huge, and that's why back in 2015, Sustainable Development Goal Target 12.3 was developed, and the objective of this target is to halve food waste globally by 2030. So, however, this target doesn't include tourism industry, despite the huge impacts of the tourism industry it can has on the food value chains. Over 34 billion tourism meals are served every year, 34 billion tourism meals. It's almost unimaginable. And according to our estimations, we could be wasting around 11 billion meals annually. Again, 11 billion meals. Just to show you the size of the issue, but also the amount of food that we can actually save from waste if we apply the relevant solutions. Следующий, пожалуйста. So very briefly, as I mentioned already, when we start looking at food value chains, можно перейти на следующий слайд, пожалуйста. When we look on food value chains, it's very clear that tourism can influence many of the stages you can see on the screen, or you will see on the screen shortly, I hope. Thank you. So from this this slide, I hope it shows basically how tourism sector can influence different stages of the value chains. Of course, not all of them, but for instance, tourism industry can play really a major impact on food services, on individual consumption as well, on waste production, beyond just tourism industry. Следующий, пожалуйста, слайд. So I'm going to my next, to my last almost slide. I'm sorry if I'm being too talkative, but just what are we offering exactly? What is the solution that we offer? So to meet Sustainable Development Goal Target 12.3 in the tourism sector, we outline a pathway, target, and milestones for the industry in our global roadmap on food waste reduction in the tourism sector. And these efforts need to focus on, first of all, again, same as with plastics, hierarchy of solutions from the most impactful to the least impactful. First, prevention of food waste and food surplus in first place, making sure that food waste isn't generated in first place. It's key. Second priority, and only second, is redistributing food surplus that does arrive so that it doesn't become waste. So redistribution, second. And then third step is diversion of food surplus that cannot be used to feed people, for instance, into animal feed and high value biomaterial processing. And only lastly, in case food waste cannot be prevented, it should be diverted from landfill to more environmentally beneficial disposal routes, such as anaerobic digestion, such as composting. So my main messages when I am presenting both plastics and food initiatives is that for us, it's very important to make sure that in your work, you prioritize the right responses and the most impactful go first, and it's on the most impactful that you concentrate your resources, your efforts, because this is where your actions will have the most impact. And also, this is where your actions will potentially also allow you to save most of your financial resources. So our roadmap targets and priority tourism businesses. So accommodation companies and cruise lines, and on your right, you have an examples of targets that the roadmap sets for accommodation companies and cruise lines. But it is also key for us to advance policies. According to latest UNWTO research on which we collaborated, 77% of national tourism policies speak of food as an asset that improves competitiveness of tourism destinations. But there are only 14 policies which are actually speaking of food waste, and 3 that portray food as a driver of sustainability and circularity. So this framework that I introduced briefly is anchored on food waste, but by acting on food waste, tourism stakeholders will be also brought to act more broadly on sustainable food management. Because by purchasing, by preparing, by consuming, by how you undertaking all of these processes, you're actually reducing potentially food waste, you're preventing food waste. So it's actually a very systemic action. It's systemic framework of actions and solutions that we are offering. And to support implementations of all of these targets, guidance that I just presented, we have a lot of tools. We have online trainings. By the way, Dagmar has collaborated with us a lot on development of several case studies, tools, online trainings that we have on our website. Следующий, последний слайд, пожалуйста. Just you will see on the very last slide, I basically put QR codes to. Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. I just, here you can see basically we have currently 4 databases of tools and resources. We have one on food, where you can also consult our online trainings, case studies, publications, toolkits. We have one on plastics, we have one on climate, and we have one on circular economy more broadly. So don't hesitate if you want more information. Would be really happy to provide you more information, but I think it would be wise that I stop here because I was already extremely talkative. Thank you so very much, and thank you, Madina, for the opportunity.
Спасибо большое, Светлана. На самом деле...
Thank you, Svetlana. The thing that you have told us and what you are doing on a global level are very important for us. And if we are following the slogan of United Nations, we are trying to think globally in our countries and beyond the boundaries of our countries. And now we are moving and immediately introducing using the instruments, tools, and practices. And I think that this is the most difficult. And here they require full commitment. And here we saw it on the Cambodians example, and people are believing in it, and they're trying to improve the world, and they started from themselves. And now I see someone's hand is rising, and Shekzot. So we have 2 speakers remaining and a couple of questions, and then we will give the floor to our next speaker. So the Shekzot. Question to Svetlana. The presentation was.
From my experience, I know that food waste is a really big part of the waste, of the solid waste in the cities and in the rural areas. It's more than 50% of the total waste composition. However, all of the tries to segregate it and to get the separately this waste and then process, it was difficult because it's all mixed in the whole in the whole mix, and it's difficult to persuade people to start segregating it unless it's regulated by the government, unless it's regulated by some other the enforcing agencies. That's why I'm saying that in the waste management is really important to have a strong government position and the foreign agency positions, especially I don't know in the fields like plastics, etc. So we know from experience that in Singapore, for example, very high fines for the waste thrown to the street or somewhere. However, it makes the city cleaner and the government, the country cleaner. But without this regulation, people are not changed anyway. So they go into different places and they behave in the same way they should do before these fines came. So what I'm saying that it's very important to get the support from the government and be very strict. This is my position. I don't know. Maybe some you have different. But very strong government regulations and high fines can make it good. For example, if we speak about hotels, then we could say if they pay taxes, they should pay extra tax for unsegregated waste and less tax if waste is segregated. In this case, they can persuade, they can do something about that, and they start working with the visitors, with tourists, with the guests. Thank you.
I actually 100% agree with you. And that's why in the work that we are doing, we're working both with businesses and with governments. And that's why also when we work with businesses, we tell them, instead of focusing on waste management, which is of course very, very important, but focus first on reduction of plastics that you use. First, focus on prevention of food waste so that it doesn't go to waste, because actually recycling is very difficult. And in tourism industry, there are different estimations depending on countries, but between 80 and 90% of companies are small and medium enterprises. So they don't have the capacity to have a recycling plant on their territory. So usually recycling is still indeed the role of local authorities or national authorities. And when this type of efforts are lacking, that the businesses, they find themselves just without any solution, proper solution to manage their waste. So the first solution that we always tell to businesses, focus on reduction, focus on prevention of waste. So that's one point. And second point, importance of regulations, 100% agree with you. And that's why also what is going on currently in Paris, these negotiations for the upcoming plastic treaty, they are so very important, and they will actually, I hope, will have huge impacts for everybody, for a lot of governments that then will be complying with the future treaty. I genuinely hope so. And then also obviously businesses will have to follow this new legal framework. So it was more just a comment, because I fully agree with you, what you just mentioned. Thank you very much.
Спасибо большое, уважаемые коллеги. Я
Thank you
предлагаю...
very much, dear colleagues. So I would like to propose you to move on. And dear Tamar Hakeshvili, I know that you are waiting to be given the floor. And Tamar Hakeshvili, Deputy Chairwoman of the Protected Natural Areas of Georgia. We know that Georgia has its own initiatives and doing some reforms in terms of introducing the principles of sustainable development. And it would be very nice for us to hear from you about your work and about your plans. So the floor is yours.
Definitely, talking about the sustainable tourism, particularly Georgia, it is a high privilege for us, taking into consideration that Georgia is a country which is quite popular, I would say, for tourists. Hence, we have quite a lot of challenges regarding to that. So basically, my presentation, could you please turn on the presentation? Yeah, thank you. So basically, I will talk about sustainable tourism. From my professional viewpoint, I will talk about one direction of sustainable tourism, which is ecotourism, actually. So ecotourism is one of the deriving and quite fast-growing sectors in Georgia, taking into consideration the biodiversity that the country is. So in this slide, you can see that definitely the green areas, this is the areas which is protected areas. So we mean that the government of Georgia takes care of increasing the protected areas in order to preserve this very high quality ecosystem that we have in Georgia. So basically what you see now, the green areas, this is 13% of the whole country, which is already protected areas. And the yellow ones are the planned protected areas. So in the coming years, we can definitely say that considering all the conservational areas that we have in Georgia, plus protected areas, emerald sites, we will be happy to announce that about almost 30% of the whole country would be preserved and would be high conservation areas. So it means that people coming for tourism and ecotourism in Georgia will have much more possibilities, actually. The next slide, please. So basically, следующий slide, пожалуйста. Спасибо. So basically, why we create protected areas? This is the way why, on one hand, to preserve the natural biodiversity of the country, and on another hand, to also increase the potential for ecotourism, for people who enjoy recreation. First of all, conservation of biodiversity, monitoring of biodiversity, to ensure that the species, flora and fauna of the country is maintained, and on another hand, to increase eco-educational awareness-raising campaigns in order for more and more people to come to our areas. Next slide, please. Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. So why we focus on ecotourism as one of the directions of sustainable tourism? Because Georgia is unique, and it is really well recognized by international organizations as well, that Georgian biodiversity is among world leading biodiversity hotspots. So basically we can say that it is among 36 hotspots of biodiversity that exist in Georgia, in the whole world. So we are quite a small country, but having the most unique, relict, and endemic species in our country, this makes the country even more attractive for visitors. Next slide, please. Следующий слайд. Еще следующий. I will not stop talking about biodiversity much more because of the issue that this is not the topic for our presentation today. Next slide, please. So first, I want to talk about the sustainable tourism outcomes and benefits, why we need to focus on this issue so actively. Once we talk about sustainable tourism, and we all know that this is one of the most fast-growing sectors in the whole world, and ecotourism is the one which has about 30% growth rate in the world. So after COVID pandemic, it was assumed that ecotourism would be the first fields of tourism which will recover, and number of visitors will return as it is right now. We can say that it has almost recovered, and we are almost at the same level as in 2019. So on another hand, we should talk about the social, environmental, and economical benefits of sustainable tourism. You know that once we work for developing sustainable tourism, first of all, we ensure that the environment is protected so that we do not touch the biodiversity. So eco-friendly accommodations are provided to visitors. So we provide visitors services which will not harm the environment. On another hand, we think, of course, about revenues for local communities who provide the ecotourist services and sustainable tourist services, so that we think that increasing their revenues can be through the services which is in line with social and environmental standards. And if we talk about statistics, we can say that about 10% of the global GDP, it is derived from sustainable tourism worldwide. So it means that it has quite big portion in the whole GDP. So we need to develop this direction in that way to be in line with environmental, social issues. And of course, I will not talk more about social issues, because community engagement and providing the services where the local communities and regional people, villagers are involved, this is one of our priorities in order them to give possibility for flourishing and development. Следующий слайд. Спасибо. What we offer to visitors, why we want to develop and how we expand the services over the country. So mostly protected areas and the recreational areas that we have in Georgia that provide sustainable tourism. provide the minimum services, and we do not try to go into competition with local people and private sector. Of course, we give floor for locals to develop as well. So mostly what we are doing with governmental efforts and state funds is developing the minimal infrastructure and the services at protected areas, so that we increase the demand for coming at these areas. And in parallel, once people come and tourists come at protected areas, they definitely need a lot of other facilities like accommodations, cafes, transportation. This is already the services what is provided by private sector, of course. So basically what services you see here, this is the one which Agency of Protected Areas itself provides, and of course there's not included the ones which is afterwards added by our private sector representatives. Next slide, please. Следующий slide. Here you see the minor infrastructure, what I was just now talking about. So visitor centers and information centers, which we will all meet at protected areas, tourism shelters where people can overnight, hanging trails, bird watching towers, picnic areas. Also, we added some adventure parks at national parks. And observation decks in some areas. So basically, this is the infrastructure which is taken care by our rangers, the staff working for the Agency of Protected Areas. And of course, maintenance of these facilities is not quite easy. The presenters just above my presentation also underlined the challenges relating to waste management. And I, of course, need to highlight that especially in Georgia, especially in the mountain regions, especially at protected areas where this is quite difficult to deal with these challenges. Our rangers, of course, have to make strategies in order to address this challenge and to provide high level services to visitors. Imagine areas which is about 2,000 meters above sea level. How you can just go there and bring waste out of this? It means that you definitely need quite well-developed strategy how you will work about this. We also try to motivate the tourists to not to leave the garbage in the mountains, in the waste bins, and we kindly ask them to bring it down with them, because for rangers in those areas where no vehicle is able to go up, definitely this is related to quite big problems to bring hundreds of kilos of waste per week. So how we do that and how it is evaluated and assessed how this work is done, it's also reflected in international recognitions that we achieve throughout our partners. So this slide demonstrates one of the latest achievements regarding UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And definitely UNESCO recognized Kolchak rainforest and wetlands as UNESCO World Heritage Site just 2 years ago, and it is inscribed in the list on the World Heritage list exactly due to nice preservation and very good care of environment. Another recognition, следующий слайд, пожалуйста. So this same and quite good illustration how we worked with local communities regarding waste management is Martvili Canyon. This area, which you see that it is quite clean and beautiful, and where you can have quite nice boat service. Just about 8 years ago, it was full of dust, garbage, watermelon shells, and Coca-Cola bottles. And there was a lot of trash left out of the feasts when locals had a nice dinner in the evenings on these areas. So basically what we did was that we created protected areas, and we made an agreement with locals who were also poaching at these areas, fishing illegally and hunting on the birds, that we would build infrastructure. We will clean the area. We will make an introduction of fishes and species and different species in the canyon. And please do not hunt. It was our main condition. So basically, first of all, they were very aggressive, and local population did not want us to bring some developments in this area. They had an understanding that it was their the land of their ancestors, and will not allow us to make some sustainable tourism infrastructure development. But after a lot of continuous considerations and negotiations with locals, we agreed that we would do all this infrastructure, make entrance fee for coming in this area, and we gave a license to locals who created a local LTD. It was about 80 villagers who gathered money and created an LTD, and now they are making the boat service in this canyon. So now we can say that these poachers are the best rangers, because they started generating a lot of revenues out of these services. So we are happy that these areas are cleaned and maintained in a proper way, and also local communities developed a lot out of this. Next slide, please. Следующий slide. And this is also one of the illustrations of developments. Yeah, this is a video. If you can have just 20 seconds just to see that. Yes. Yeah, this is one of the protected areas, which is quite popular, and they got the national award for being taking care quite well, and one of the most adventurous national parks in Georgia. And this is a good illustration of sustainable tourism in Georgia, because the area is cleaned, and our rangers are taking care to collect all the garbage out of this area, and to manage the crowds of people who go there for taking this quite extreme hiking trail, which is hanging on the rock, actually. So basically, when we talk about sustainable tourism, we talk that we allow people to come at protected areas, taking into consideration the carrying capacity of protected areas, to provide them services and to ensure that it will have a sustainable effect. So basically what you see from the statistics of number of visitors at protected areas, we are proud that the increasing trend is quite sufficient. It's about 20% increase annually. Of course, not talking about 2020 when pandemic closed all the gates for this, but as you see, the number of visitors after pandemic is quite rapidly maintained and restored, and we expect that in 2023 the number of visitors will exceed those figures which you see as 2019. By the way, if we just compare 4 months statistics, it's already 34% in comparison to 2019 statistics. So, следующий слайд, пожалуйста. So this same is reflecting on revenues for the agency as well. So you see that once number of visitors increase, the number of the revenue are also increasing. It means that we get quite big investments in order to again reinvest this amount for sustainable tourism development, to take care about biodiversity and to take care that these areas are cleaned and no problems with waste management or some other issues is on place. Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. So how we do that and how we ensure that the services that we provide to our visitors is improved and day by day made more convenient. So the later time, or from 2019, we introduced electronic ticketing and online ticketing system at protected areas, which I would say that facilitated the process of tourism groups quite a lot. On the first year, about we had 11% increase in visitation after we introduced the electronic ticketing system. We also introduced the combo tickets, which enabled people to go at a couple of areas with the same ticket and made some economy out of this. So basically, this is the illustration how we work. We work for digitalization. We work for introducing new systems at protected areas. And on another hand, try to keep the standards so that not to damage environment and the infrastructure with too much crowded people, of course.
My apologies, Dagmar. My apologies. The thing is that we really focus in the session on plastic and waste management. And I see some questions in the chat asking, you mentioned that some tourists, well, I see very beautiful landscapes and also the parks and etc. How do you keep them clean? How do you motivate the tourists to not to, leave the garbage after they leave the territory? How would you motivate the tourists to collect the garbage in protected areas? And do you have any initiatives or activities that support this?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. So basically, this is the Agency of Protected Areas and the staff working in the system who are main players in this process. So rangers, you know that this is the people who make law enforcement and also make patrolling all over the territories. So this is about 900,000 hectares of the whole country. This is 13% of the whole country that they are making patrolling. They are developing waste management plans, which is a particular document which envisages the activities throughout the years. So basically, sometimes this document is elaborated for 6 years, and now we try to move it for the next 9 years to be in line with the management plans. And according to these plans, the administration, the local representations try to make patrolling schemes and monitor that the waste management is in time brought out of these areas so that visitors will not have any problems. As I described a couple of minutes ago, in the mountainous regions, which is quite high, and there's just pedestrian way and there's just hiking trails, it is quite difficult to bring the waste down. So that's why we try to make awareness raising campaigns in order to advocate the idea that those visitors who are going for hike in the high mountains, let them bring their garbage together. We also introduced particular bags with printing that please do not damage the environment, and please bring this garbage with this bag back in administrations, so that they can collect all this garbage in their bags and bring this bag and leave it in the garbage bins. So this is one of the illustrations how we try to make awareness raising on one hand, and on another hand to simplify the work for our rangers as well.
And there is a question in the chat. Do you have any financial schemes available in protected areas for the tourists to collect the garbage, apart from the bags that you provide?
So basically, under the Agency of Protected Areas, so we have protected areas, just natural ones, not cultural, because cultural heritage sites are managed by the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports. And in the direction of natural heritage sites, the financial schemes are integrated in the budgets of protected areas, which is coming from mostly from state funds and the donor organizations. We work closely with our donors, especially I would like to highlight Swedish International Cooperation Agency with the government of Sweden, who is particularly playing an important role to support us in waste management. Also UNDP, definitely they are quite good partners of us, you know, who play a crucial role how we basically address these challenges.
I see. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I had to stop your presentation. We are running a bit of time, so we have the last speaker, but I see there is a last question for you in the chat. How do you collect and calculate ecotourism impact and receipts? And is it only entrance fee or all economy around protected areas? So I guess if the entry fee somehow covers and incentivize the tourist to manage the garbage.
Thank you. So basically, once the chart which I illustrated, this is the revenues from not only entrance fees, but also from concessions and tourism services that we get at protected areas. But if we talk about ecotourism impact and what impact it has on the regional development, yes, we quite frequently, almost once in 3 years, conduct the researches for local communities to calculate approximate revenues, what revenues they are getting, particularly through the ecotourism services that they are conducting just in the surrounding areas of protected areas. Just I want to share with you small figures that a couple of years ago we made a similar study, and we saw that only 5 protected areas, villages around these 5 protected areas generated about 30 million lari. So USD, just to say, it is not few for 5 locations during 1 year. So we think that this is the start, and after COVID period, when it flourishes, this will be able restored quite efficiently.
This is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this information. This is also inspiring. And we hope very much as UNEP also to cooperate with you if you are interested, because we have a plan to replicate our best practices of Kyrgyzstan to other countries. In case if you have an interest, we can discuss this bilaterally. Thank you very much for coming and sharing the information. Oh, Georgia, I appreciate that. Thank you. У нас есть последний спикер, но не менее важный.
We got our last speaker, very important speaker, our coordinator of the project, the coordinator on sustainable development of plastics and waste management. And despite his health conditions, she is with us, and she will share the results of our project that we're planning to give to other countries of Central Asia. Thank you. Dear participants, good afternoon. Today I would like to share those results of the project that we had already implemented. So the Sustainable Tourism and Plastic Food Waste Management project started in February of this year, and it will last until June 2023. The project is being implemented within the UNEP, Sustainable Tourism and Waste Management, and the targets of this project is also in compliance with the targets of the plastic management project. And so this project is being implemented by ACG Central Asia, the management and solutions in sustainable development. It is the mission of the organization. The organization is also the operator of the network of the network management wastenet.kg. Before we go directly to the component and events and outcomes of the project, I would like to give some numbers which are showing the situation in the tourism sector of Kyrgyzstan. And 118,000 economic entities are doing economic activities related to tourism, and 14,000 entities are those entities who are directly providing services in terms of recreation, leisure, it's hotels, it's guest houses, and treatment and recovery centers, etc. Basically, they are located in Bishkek and in the resort zone of Isikul in Isikul Lake, which has over 1,000 facilities in recreation and organization of tourism, such as small guest houses and big hotels and resorts. And on an yearly basis, the number of tourists visiting Kyrgyz Republic keeps increasing, and both Kyrgyzstan and they are immediately visiting the Isikul Lake. And here, unfortunately, the situation with the landfill, an accumulation of the waste, and it is not good, and the solid waste number of solid waste accumulated is increasing, and it is over 1,200,000 tons of waste were transported in 2021. It is was contribution of such big cities such as Bishkek, Osh, and other cities of Chui region. The main target of the project, sustainable tourism and waste management, it is a support for the tourist sector and preventing, countering the plastic and food wastes, and collaboration or in extension of the rights and possibilities of women. The key parties, it was several times noted, so this problem cannot be solved alone. And so the key parties are state agencies, ministries, agencies, administrations of the cities, and local administrations, and the tourist sector entities, including the destinations that we worked with, and industry, and as well as the sector which is dealing with the waste management and waste processing, which are reducing the number of wastes landfilled, and they are all the members of the business community. And they are, and of course, NGOs, expert organizations, mass media, and others. And the main components of the project, it's an educational component and the component which is directed to extension of the rights and possibilities, opportunities of women in tourism. It is the facilitating, the promoting the policy in waste management, which is very active nowadays in the Kyrgyz Republic. And the last one, which is the practical component, it is a organization of the demonstrational system of waste management in the selected destinations and introduction of the waste management systems in there. And here, regarding the educational component, the main target is raising awareness and building a capacity of guest houses, individual entrepreneurs in tourism regarding the plastic and food waste management. And of course, the main is the stimulating and the opportunity to gain the incomes thanks to the establishing the green tourism model. And what kind of events did we do? And it is the thematic webinars on plastic and waste management, and including the today's and tomorrow's webinars, and which are directed for capacity building and improving the knowledge. The next is animation video clips, and then there are two video clips, and which are related to the plastic and waste management in tourism sector. The information is quite clear and accessible, and the guidance how this problem can be addressed, and then they will be for the destinations and guest houses, and they will be quite clear, and they will have all the answers how to build the waste management systems in there. And so next component is the empowerment of women and their participation in addressing the plastic and waste management system. And in March, we had the regional tourism, regional workshop, sustainable tourism. So we had speakers from UNEP and from Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan speakers. They shared their experience on the women leadership and in the waste management system. So the whole workshop was both offline and online, and over 100 participants had a chance to participate in this workshop. So this is a small video clip how it was held. And so next direction. The next component is collaboration in promotion of reform and policy in waste handling. Today, on the political level, in the government authorities level, they work on revising the legislation and legal framework regarding the waste handling is being conducted. And also the introduction of the mechanism and extension of responsibilities for producers who are producing the plastic packages. And within our event, we supported conduction and discussion of the draft documents. And this there the draft concept on extended responsibilities was conducted, both involving the tourism and waste management sectors, and engaged different experts and representatives of government authorities. These are the both Ministry of Ecology and other agencies participated in this discussion. It is the development of recommendations. First of all, it is a roadmap on plastic management and implementation of the recommendation of the global initiative on plastic and tourism and other international recommendations. And based on them, some measures were proposed to be introduced in the Kyrgyz Republic stage by stage. And the next recommendation is on introducing to the legislation certain recommendations, including the waste management, and of course, with a focus to plastic, as the plastic holds 45% of all the wastes generated in the Kyrgyz Republic. It was March 9th, and it was when the discussion took place. The fourth component, it is a practical component that I had told it is organization of the pilot demonstration system of the waste management in tourist destinations. In order to introduce the waste management system, we selected the destination Jirgalang. It is a very beautiful natural location with a natural ecosystem and very attractive for tourists, and quite a large number of tourists are visiting from foreign countries visiting this place now. And accordingly, we stopped our choice on this location. What we did for this period, first of all, we estimated, we assessed the territory of Chirgalang, and together with the members of destination, we developed a plan on introduction of the waste management system in their village. So there was thematic workshops conducted on training on responsible consumption and waste management. Also, in the facility, specialized bins were procured and installed in 12 guest houses. And the most important thing is the waste collection point was installed. And also there was a hydraulic press installed in order to reduce the volume of the waste. And after that, these wastes are moved out by the operator or the representative of the recycler, who are transporting them for the further recycling. So the mandatory introduction of the counting system. And the most important thing is the mechanism of the waste to income was introduced. And with this mechanism, the inhabitants and guest houses can earn just by giving the collected wastes. And it is noteworthy that in this work, Alupmatu, it is a local management took active part, and so they allocated a land plot for installation of these facilities. So they took very active part in organizational moments in developing the plans, and accordingly, a person was hired who is now responsible for collection of the waste and giving it for further recycling. And the next point is in the destination Jirgalang, it got the badge, the badge of the eco-recycler practice for introducing this waste management system. So its data will also be introduced into the general meter of the database, and it is the location of the Jirgalang village. It is next to Karakol in mountainous area. It is a very beautiful landscape. So these are the seminars, workshops, consultations, assessments, and planning. It was done in February, and in May, when the waste collection point was solemnly opened. So next slide, please. So what is the system which is aligned at this moment? It is a separated collection in 12 guest houses. It is the giving it to recyclers, and after that, it will be given directly to the recycling facility where they recycle until the last product, and they will be recycled for the end use. So I'm just proposing to enjoy a very short video clip, how it was done. How was the opening ceremony of this collection point in destination Jirgalang?
Айтамын ғанаң ей, атадан ғана қалған мурасты. Жаңырып заман ей, жаңымын баба салтын уланты. Намысын биік сақтаған ел, табышын өліп тыңдап жүректе. Қадырын тұйып барықтанам ей, қайратынан жанбаған, қалың елді барықтаған. Егемендік типпен жилен өмірін берген бізген қаншадам ей. Ташта ізі қалған қырғызымның бірін кеттің ауыз. батырларга маңей байырдан куруп тышты элдешти намысын бийик сактаган эл жогошулуп кадырын туюп барктанам мен.
Следующий слайд можно. Ну и в заключении...
And at the end, one important event which took place in May 11 and 30, it was the field event for mass media regarding the plastic pollution in Kyrgyzstan. 12 persons, representatives of international and national publications, journalists took part in the field event, and which included visit of the destination of Jirgalang, the participation in the opening ceremony, then familiarization with the waste collection mechanism, and a briefing with participation of the Ministry of Economy and Commerce, which took place within the framework of the Sikul International Fair 2023. And there's also the opportunity to look how they are cleaning the lake bed in Isikul, the guys, the divers, which are cleaning voluntarily the bed of the lake. And literally within the 10 minutes of diving, they took out more than 10 kilos of plastic bottles. So this is the media tour program. So journalists, they had a chance to directly see, and they accordingly they published their own materials and information, which was vastly published in different languages, in Turkish, in French, in Chinese, in all the countries. So they prepared the publications in all these countries, and based on the tour which took place in May. So you can familiarize with these materials using the language which is comfortable for you. Thank you for attention. Thank you, Natalia. I'd like to say that our project,
Последнее мероприятие в рамках нашего проекта.
It will be our last day today, so we're planning second cycle where we want to continue and disseminate this to other countries, to those countries who will be interested in collaborating with us. Please feel free to address if you have any interests, the Central Asian countries, so that to give this experience, to transfer this experience. So you've got very good opportunity in developing the sustainable tourism, and plastic and waste will completely be dedicated to the eco-certification issues. It is the focus that we have chosen for our second cycle of our activities in the region. That's why we are inviting all of you to join tomorrow. And today we are not finishing yet, and so we're already beyond our time frame. And if you have any last questions and comments, please feel free to text or to raise your hands. And so the request is to focus on our topic, so that your comments is related to the topic of our session. So I see a hand rising, so please introduce yourself and your question, please. Я Janabek Kulumbetov, yes, I'm representing in Sun Group, so I had internet problems, unfortunately. Janabek Kulumbetov. So my question, it was a very interesting and good topics were discussed, and very good experience was shared, and thank you for our speakers. My question is regarding the sustainability of tourism. It also regards the waste, which is a very serious problem. It is a very acute problem in Kyrgyzstan too. And so the end solution of this question is when when these collected waste, plastics and other wastes, and they are given to the recycler. And when they are given to the recycler, it will create a good conditions for circular economy. For instance, in Isikul or throughout the Kyrgyzstan, so we cannot do recycling in Isikul because it is a biosphere zone. So I would like to ask about the practices. Maybe I miss it, how we can deal with this issue, if it is impossible, if there is any option for solving this issue. So the chain of the issue of handling the waste should be addressed completely. In Kyrgyzstan, it is not completely resolved yet. There are only discussions and talks on the no. I think that it is our great achievement for now, and I think that there should be a final solution of this question. So, and then we'll be able to say that we finally reached the logical end. So we need to pass all the chains in the circular economy. So I would like to invite Asel to share information. Maybe she was short of time to introduce all this thing, and on our part, we'll try to develop this chain. So I also started answering the questions in our chat box. It was really a great experience. So we could build up the whole chain from the time of generating waste until the point of recycling and producing a finished products using the plastic and polyethylene, which is being collected by the community. 12 guest houses, which are locally situated in one zone. So in this zone, we arranged a collection point where 12 guest houses, they collect separately the wastes and they give it to the collection point. And it is not worthy that some other guest houses, they are not getting any payment for collecting and giving these wastes, and I am very thankful for them for this ecological dedication. So the collection point, by collecting the waste, they are pressing and they're briquetting the wastes and preparing it for the transportation and for selling these wastes. And so the recycler, it is the company on recycling and producing the finished product from the secondary raw material. It is in the next village. It comes according to the schedule. It comes to the collection point and collects the waste and pays for the destination foundation the cost of this waste. And so destination Chirgalang, which includes these guest houses, they get income. So we calculated what would be the financial incomes to the Destination Development Foundation. So based on our first pilot transportation, at that time it was not the pressed plastic yet, and we could forecast that in average this tourist destination will get an income up to 100,000 som. It is more than 1,000 USD. And I think that in a global scale, it is not a very big amount, but for the territory of this destination, in principle, it is quite sufficient to strengthen its own practice on waste management and to undertake some solutions on resource saving. And the most interesting thing is the collection point is in the balance sheet of this guest house, and so they are ready even to disseminate and to train how to do it in the small localities and how the system can be maintained. And of course, they do the mandatory accounting, and so they register the collection and the weight, and then we will see how much money this tourist destination is going to attract. And so the recycler in the next village, it undertook all the obligations to support, consult, and on transportation of these wastes. And in his company, he does the primary handling recycling, and he produces the products such as bags and other plastic products. And it is only one company in Kyrgyzstan which provides this full cycle. In our local entrepreneurs from other regions, from other districts, they are using and enjoying these plastic finished products. And it is justified by that the local authority, local community, and entrepreneurs, they are interested, and we see how this interest is growing and how other regions of Kyrgyzstan is interested. And now we are thinking of arranging the visits to our point, and I think that it would be a very successful campaign. And when we visited directly Jergalang with journalists, and when we visited the facility, plastic processing facility, there were 20 men working, and so they didn't work all the time because of the shortage of the raw material. And so by collecting the plastic in the destination, we are providing jobs to these people in the facility. When we try to collect information in places, the work of one facility is sufficient to process the whole plastic in this region. It is a win-win approach, and everyone is winning here, and practically there are no negative points. And if the system is well aligned, if there is an agreement with the private sector plus the local administration and the stakeholders and other organizations which modeled all this process, will gain. And I would like to answer the question of our colleague and who told that in a school region we shouldn't do that. And I would like to tell that there is a company which is called Just Travel, very young company. So it's preparation for the production activities. Where it is quite far from the lake. It is next to Karakol city. It is a company which installed a new equipment, and the CO2 emissions are minimum, and they also use water in a minimum amounts. And so in the enterprise, they consider the technology on minimizing, and so we have very good news. And so this enterprise undertook the obligations to rent those unauthorized landfills close to these territories. And so they took obligation to clean, to separate, to sort the garbage which exists in those territories. And I think that Akjargalang destination, Aksolo village, and the tourist zone will gradually be cleaned. And we also inviting all our colleagues who have the opportunities both to visit Jergalang. It is very magic zone with intensive developing tourism, and there would be a maximum interest from the foreign tourists. And we would also like to invite you to visit the enterprises where they do this processing. And it is noteworthy that processing in Kyrgyzstan, it is being finished only the primary level preparation and granulating and exporting. But this enterprise could adjust the full process from the raw material and with the finished product. Thank you for your answer. So we are beyond our time frame, and I think that everything was very interesting. So we really had very much information for thinking, and I think that the right question will be half of it will be our next stage. In our next step, we will continue our discussion on certification. And so please invite, I'm inviting you, please invite your colleagues, and we will continue our discussions with you. So working on the eve of the International Day of the Environment, which will be celebrated on June 5. And I would like to congratulate all our participants today in advance, and I would like to say that the solution of the problem will be possible if there are people who are thinking, who are worrying, and we are counting on your participation, and we rely on your collaboration. So we are short of time to show the video clip, which was prepared within this project. So, but it is on the which it has a you can download this video clip by the link provided and enjoy it, and we will provide all the presentations to you, so you will be given all the links to those presentations on the chat box. And with this, I'm proposing you to finish our first day. It was very interesting discussions, and I think that each of us made their own conclusions and made very interesting recommendations for themselves. And now you will be given the links for the presentations on the chat box. Thank you. Many thanks for our experts, participants. We are open for collaboration, and we're interested to take real actions on plastic and food waste processing, including in recreation and tourist sectors. And see you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.